A wise friend of mine once told me, don't poop where you eat, or in other words, just don't date people that you work with. Because don't get me wrong, it could lead to good things, but also to bad things. But let's just say one time, I remember I had no choice. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So today's story takes place back when I was in high school. I remember I didn't really have a good job, so I remember I ended up going into the restaurant industry. If you guys don't know, basically, the restaurant industry is one of the best ways for high schoolers, or at least young people at a young age, or people that still look young and maybe in their 30s, make a lot of money. And what I mean by this is that tips in a restaurant is always gold, because it's like getting extra pocket change, you know what I mean? So I remember when my friends told me that I should work in a restaurant, I ended up getting hired at a restaurant that was pretty decent. It was a steakhouse and I really enjoyed it. Like, I remember going in there, working my shifts, and it was really fun. But then all good things come to an end. I remember what ended up happening was basically corporate wanted to change out the managers and basically put in new managers that were more responsible, because apparently we got too much leeway to enjoy the shift more than actually working the shift. So basically we got new managers in there, and I'm not gonna lie, it was the worst thing ever. I remember we had a guy that worked there and he was our new manager, and basically he would always, and I mean always, nitpick on the smallest things. And obviously he was a part of the kitchen staff, so luckily I didn't have to deal with him much since I was a waiter. But then came the worst part. I remember we had a new woman manager as, like, you know, basically the manager of the front of the house, and she was the ultimate worst woman ever. I remember she was almost the same as the kitchen manager, nitpicky about everything. But for some reason, I remember when I entered for my first shift with these new managers, surprisingly the woman was really nice to me. The new girl manager, I remember she would always come up to me and say, oh hey Bubba, just make sure you put everything away, and yeah, if you want to go off early you can, by the way, like, feel free to. And I remember I found it really weird, but at the same time I kind of just let it slide. Then I remember 1 week later I ended up getting another shift that I was working, and basically when I entered in I realized there was a new worker. She was a really hot waiter, and I remember she was always like staring me down in the most weirdest way possible. I didn't really recognize her, nor did I know her. And then I remember she ended up coming up to me saying, oh hey, like, you must be Bubba, like, hi, how you doing? I remember I looked at her and said, oh, like, I'm all right, what's going on? And then she ended up telling me, oh, nothing, we just haven't met yet, and you know, it's always good to know your coworkers. She ended up saying that, and when she told me that, I remember our manager ended up saying the same thing literally last week when they first came in. So now I remember I was kind of like weirded out by that, but I guess, you know, she was a goody two shoes, so I just kind of let it go. But then one thing I started realizing as the shift went on and basically like the day was going down, she would always, and I mean always, be talking to the manager. I found it super weird, and I remember like they weren't just talking like workers, they were talking as if they were like really close. So I remember I ended up walking up to both of them saying, oh, like, hey, you met the new manager. I remember she started laughing, both of them actually started laughing, and they both said, that's my daughter. Wait, what is what I said? And then I remember her daughter, which was the new worker, I thought, ended up saying, oh yeah, like, that's my mom, like, she's the manager. I didn't know like what to tell you. It's probably not smart to tell you, but like, you know, it's whatever. And then she ended up walking away. Now it's really weird when, you know, I guess two people that are related work together. I don't know, at least I found it weird. But then I remember basically throughout the weeks of, you know, me working with them, one thing I realized is that they always, and I mean always, would be having conversations and talking, and I guess one day they ended up developing a plan. Now this is where things get really intense in the story. I remember basically when I was like working a shift one night, the girl, the manager's daughter, ended up coming up to me saying, so like, what do you do for fun around here after you've done your shift? I remember I looked at her and said, well, I wouldn't know because I'm still on my shift, as I'm cleaning a table. And then I remember she ends up sitting on the booth that I was cleaning and saying, oh, like, do you want to like maybe like hang out after work? I told her, oh, like, nah, like, sorry, like, I'm working late, I'm gonna be here till close. And then right when I said that, she ended up getting up and leaving. At first I thought, you know, like, oh, it's whatever, she knows I can't hang out with her, blah blah blah, move on with the day. But then not even like 5 minutes later, my manager ends up walking up to me saying, oh, like, Bubba, you're off your shift, by the way, you can go home. Wait, what is what I said? Did I do something wrong is what I said afterwards? And she said, no, like, you're totally fine, you did amazing, I'm just letting you get off early, you're such a good worker, thank you. And then she walked away. I found that super weird, and I remember when I went to go to the back of the lockers to pack up all my things, I remember out of nowhere the manager's daughter was already sitting there waiting for me and said, you're off your shift, want to go like hang out? Yeah, I guess is what I said. And I remember basically me and her, we ended up getting my car, we started driving around, I started showing her some pretty cool places around the area. I remember afterwards when it was getting late, I ended up dropping her off at her house, and when I did, no joke when I say this, she literally said, do you want to like come inside? Go inside your house is what I said afterwards. She's like, don't worry, like, my mom's not home, I think she's still at the restaurant closing up. I mean, I guess, yeah, sure, why not? So I remember basically I ended up parking my car in front of my manager's house house and I went in there with my manager's daughter. One thing led to another. Basically, we're sitting on the couch watching a movie on my manager's flat screen TV, and yeah, I started making out with her daughter. Pretty awkward, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, she initiated it, all right? I remember we started making out, and then we ended up basically doing the devil's tango for like a good, I want to say, hour. But then out of nowhere, I remember I ended up hearing the key to a door opening, and then from there, I remember my manager ended up walking into the house, seeing me on the couch, literally not wearing anything, and absolutely shoving my eggplant into her daughter. It was super awkward, so I remember I ended up running for my pants and putting them on as fast as I could. And then I remember I looked at my manager and said, oh, like, I was just leaving, like, yo, like, my bad. And then my manager ended up saying the most weirdest thing ever. It wasn't, no, get out of my house. It wasn't, what are you doing here? It was literally, oh, like, I didn't tell you to stop. Wait, what is what I said? And this is where the story gets crazy. My manager's daughter ended up saying, oh, like, if you want to stay the night, you can. Like, don't worry, my mom's totally cool with it. And I remember I ended up looking at my manager. My manager was like, oh, yeah, like, it's totally fine if you're with my daughter. Wait, what is what I said afterwards? And I ended up talking to my manager saying, oh, but like, I have a shift tomorrow, so like, I should probably be heading home. Oh, like, you can be off that shift, is what the manager's daughter said. And I remember I looked at her and said, oh, like, sorry, like, I gotta be there. And then I remember my manager ended up looking at her daughter and then looking at me saying, oh, no, like, she's right. Like, you don't have to go. You could stay the night here. Listen, I would, but I really gotta go home, is what I said afterwards. And then that's when my manager decides to do the most scariest thing ever and ended up locking the door to her house. She said, Baba, you're gonna stay here or you're fired. Wait, what is what I said afterwards? And then that's when I realized I ended up staying the night there. I stayed one night there, and the next morning I woke up super early at like 7 a.m. And while everyone was asleep, I ended up basically running for the door and basically going back home. I remember when I got home, I didn't go for my shift that day. I remember I decided to stay home and not go, and I was getting flooded with text messages from my manager's daughter, which was weird because I never ended up giving her my phone number. I guess my manager ended up giving it to her. I have no idea. But basically at this point, the work-life balance was ruined. I had no idea what to do, and basically from there, let's just say the next time I went in for a shift, things got really insane. But this story is long enough, so make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you guys want the next part, and I'll see all you dudes in the next video. Peace out, guys.